Professor Worgley's here. We just got done with the slides. We're going to go to the next coding example, which is called scope.html. Make sure you save your previous coding example so you don't lose any of your work. We're in number 4, scope.html, and we're going to be in this first script tag here. So I have a variable here. It's called Pokemon. You'll see this variable is called Pokemon, and it's equal to Pikachu. So here, remember in JavaScript, I don't need to define the variable's type. I put var, which is variable, what the name of the variable is, and then I can assign it a value. So if I put an integer here, it'll store it as an integer. If I put a double, it'll store it as a double. But I'll always use var, which makes JavaScript very easy and convenient to use. Now here I have a variable called Pokemon, and I'm trying to print this variable in the first log. Do you think Pokemon will be accessible in this first log? Well, that depends. We got to think about its scope. I'm going to create a function below. So this will make the example more clear. Let's call it page loaded. And inside this function, I'm going to try to access that variable as well. So I'll do a console log. Let's say I call this my second log. And I'm going to print out the Pokemon variable. When I put a function there, it's a little bit easier to see. If you remember in the slides, if a variable is defined in a function, it's local. If it's defined outside a function, it's global. So let's run this page and see what happens. I don't see anything. Why am I not able to see these prints? Well, remember, you got to right-click, do an inspect, and here's the elements page. We need to go to the console tab, and you'll see here's my first log, and where's my second log? You'll see there is no second log. Why? This is a function declaration. It's loaded into the browser, but it's not execute until the function is called. So either I need some action like an onload or an onClick to call that function to execute the function. So I'll put an onload on the body. Let's say I do onload and I call page loaded. You got to remember the parentheses, otherwise I'll get an error. So let's refresh the page and you'll see my second log. Now if I take these parentheses off, which I see a lot of students do not forget the parentheses because the function won't work and the TAs are going to take points off. It's very important, those two parentheses, otherwise the code won't work. So if I refresh the page, you'll see my second log is gone. Now you're going to also notice the order of the logs is funny. Here, second log is at the end, while first log is at the beginning. Shouldn't it go first log and then second log? We're going to talk about the order here soon. Let's focus on the scope. So in this case, Pokemon is a global variable. It's accessible outside the function and inside the function. But let's take a look at a local variable. I'll define a local variable called trainer. And let's say trainer is equal to Nick. Let's say I try to print this out. I'll do a console log, and I'll say third log. It's third log in the code at least. And I'll print out trainer. You'll see brackets recognizes this variable because I've defined it up here. It also recognizes this variable as a string because I stored a string into the variable. So let brackets autocomplete. If I type TR, you'll see it pops up. I hit enter. It auto-completed the variable for me. Make sure you include the semicolon. If I refresh the page, you'll see third log. This is a local variable because it's declared inside this function. Therefore, it has a local scope, which means it can be accessed in the same function. But what happens if I try to access it outside of the function? So this has me. It should actually be called trainer. So you see the fourth log, FOURTH, and the fifth log. So do you think the fourth log, you can look right here, will be able to print Pokemon? Yes or no? Do you think the fifth log will be able to print trainer? Yes or no? Well, let's test it. If I refresh the page, you'll see first log prints Pikachu. That's right here. That makes sense because Pokemon is a global variable. Therefore, it's accessible outside of the function. Fourth log prints Pikachu, which is right here. Pokemon is a global variable. Therefore, it's accessible outside the function. Therefore, this print can access it. Now you'll see 6 log is equal to Pikachu. Okay, where's the 6 log? Let me scroll down. You'll see 6 log can access Pokemon even in another script tag. So when I say this variable is global, it's global throughout the entire HTML document. So here I have a variable called Pokemon. I can also access that in another script. Now I have second log equal to Pikachu. Where's my second log? Second log's here. Pokemon's global, so I can access it inside the function. Third log is equal to Nick. Trainer is local, so I can access it inside the function. But you'll see here on line 29, which is the 5th log, which is this error here, trainer is not defined. So trainer is not accessible outside the function. And you'll see on line 40, you'll see scope.html, it has a colon and a number 40, so that's line 40. Here's line 40. Trainer is also not defined. So trainer is a local variable. It can only be accessed in the function. It cannot be accessed outside of the function, and it cannot be accessed in other scripts. But Pokemon can because it's global. So remember, JavaScript has function level scope. That means any variable declared in a function is local to that function and can only be used in the function. However, any variable declared outside the function is in the global namespace. It can be accessed throughout the entire script and also in other scripts on the page. Okay, so let's take some notes so we make sure we understand this. In this example, Pokemon, the variable Pokemon, is a global variable. Thus, it is in scope when I try to print it out here. And inside the function, when it's executed, you'll see Pokemon is also in scope here because it's a global variable. It can be accessed inside of functions and outside of functions. Now I define a variable called trainer, and trainer was defined within the function. So it's not in scope in the 5th log. Why? Since it was defined in the function, it can only be used in the function. So here it's out of the function and it's not in its scope, so it cannot be accessed. However, with global variables, we can access them in other script blocks. But if a local variable cannot be accessible in the same block outside of the function, it'll definitely not be accessible in other blocks when it's defined inside the function. So local variables are not accessible in other script blocks. Now, I want to talk about the order of these tags and why they're in such a weird order. We're going to do that in the next video. Stick with Professor Wergeles, and I'll show you what's happening with the order of the print statements.